So what makes a coaster underrated? The definition of underrated can vary from person to person, but for the purposes of this video, in my personal opinion, I'm going to talk about 6 of the most underrated coasters in America that I have rode. These coasters just simply don't get the recognition they deserve. They often get overlooked, but they're actually really great rides and they deserve a lot more recognition than they get. Some of them may be in parks that just aren't visited a lot, and others are in really popular parks but get overshadowed by the bigger, newer, possibly better rides, arguably, but they still deserve recognition in their own right. So, in no particular order, here is the 6 most underrated coasters in America. Dominator at King's Dominion often gets overshadowed by other coasters in the park, such as I-305 takes a lot of the attention, Twisted Timbers, and when it was open, Volcano the Blast Coaster as well. However, Dominator stands strong in its own right. So it is over 4,000 feet long and it has 135 foot tall vertical loop. It does feature interlocking corkscrews, which you'd think would be rough, but are actually really smooth. And it reaches speeds of up to 65 miles per hour, and it can pull up to 3.8 Gs. So a pretty intense ride, a pretty long ride as well, being the world's longest floorless coaster. And this coaster was originally located at Six Flags Ohio / Geauga Lake, opened as Batman Dark Flight in 2000 and was moved to King's Dominion and opened in 2008. So as a B&M, it's a great ride, but it just doesn't get the recognition it deserves. It's severely underrated among B&Ms in its own park and among floorless coasters. Coasters like Bizarro at Great Adventure or Kraken at SeaWorld Orlando get a lot of the floorless coaster attention. But Dominator just seems to be overlooked, and I don't know why. It's just severely underrated because it really is a great ride. It's definitely top 3 in the park at King's Dominion. Most underrated coaster is Rockin' Roller Coaster, starring Aerosmith at Disney's Hollywood Studios in Orlando, Florida. So this coaster was built in 1999 by Vekoma. And it is a launched coaster, and it goes 0 to 57 in 2.8 seconds. It pulls 5 Gs, and it has 3 inversions. So for a Disney coaster, this is definitely very, very intense. And it reminds me, like the ride experience in the dark and the launch reminds me a lot of like Flight of Fear at Kings Island. So, you're in the dark, you hit 5 Gs, that nice launch, and 3 inversions. But this coaster really ain't talked about much. I don't know if it could be overshadowed by other coasters in the park, such as Expedition Everest, Big Thunder Mountain, there's Dwarf's Mine Train, and it seems like it's kind of forgotten at Disney. And I don't know why, because it's a really intense and it's a really great ride. Obviously the music theme with the Aerosmith and the music soundtrack. I feel maybe that could deter some people if they don't really like the theming that much. I like Aerosmith, so I think it's really cool, but I guess some people don't. But this coaster literally gets hardly any recognition at all at Disney. And it definitely deserves more recognition than it does get. Because again, it's a fantastic ride. It's super intense. And it's a lot of fun. And it's a must ride. The next underrated coaster I'd like to talk about is the Raven at Holiday World. And this coaster is in a park with 2 other wooden coasters, the Legend and the Voyage, and also with Thunderbirds the launched wing coaster by B&M. So the Voyage gets pretty much all the attention, and it is a wonderful coaster. The Legend does get a lot of attention too, but the Raven isn't really talked about. I've heard from some people say they didn't even know that the Raven even existed. And it's even right at the entrance, so a little strange it never gets talked about. So it was built by CCI Custom Coasters International, and it was opened in 1995, and it has an 85-foot drop, and it reaches speeds of up to 50 miles per hour. It's not a super long ride, but it's not the shortest I've ever rode either. But that setting, how it flies over Lake Rudolph, is really nice. It does have some airtime. It has a really unique layout, I think, for a wooden coaster, and it's really not that rough. And since it doesn't go super fast and it's not super tall, I think it could be a good introductory coaster for kids that are wanting to go to those bigger coasters, but before you get them to bigger coasters such as the Voyage. And it just has a beautiful setting in the woods, and this coaster definitely deserves more recognition than it does get. The next underrated coaster I'd like to talk about is Thunderation, located at Silver Dollar City in Branson, Missouri. This is an Aero mine train, and it opened in 1993, so it's one of the newer Aero mine trains, actually. It's 3,000 feet long. It has the most gorgeous setting in the Ozarks, and gosh, this uses the train to its advantage so beautifully. This coaster, for a mine train, I feel like a lot of the mine trains are rough, and this one's not really rough. The tunnels are great, the helix is great, just the gorgeous setting of this mine train. Personally, this is my favorite mine train by Aero that I've ever rode, and it just don't get talked about because it's in a park that's overshadowed by other attractions. This is an absolutely fantastic ride, and for a mine train, it's actually one of the most thrilling ones. Like, I feel like you get moving really fast on this, actually, at certain parts. But it's still more family oriented for the kids and stuff. The lift hill is kind of slow, which does deter a little bit from the ride experience, but you get gorgeous views while you're going up the lift hill, so it makes it okay. But overall, this is just a mine train in general that's severely underrated, and a coaster that's underrated as well, especially being at Silver Dollar City. But I highly recommend Thunderation. Great ride. For my next underrated coaster, I'm choosing Still Force at Dorney Park. And this is a lot like Mamba at Worlds of Fun, but personally, I prefer Still Force over Mamba. So this is a hypercoaster. It is 205. It has a 205-foot drop. It's 5,600 feet long. And it goes a max speed of 75 miles per hour. And this ride is incredibly smooth, and it has a lot of airtime, especially after that mid-course brake run on its return trip back to the station. And it's a really great ride, built by Morgan, and it's just not talked about. In the world of hypercoasters, B&M get all the attention. Even Giovanola gets more attention than these. Magnum XL 200, but Still Force in particular, and Mamba both, they are very overlooked. Some people say that they're not very forceful. They don't have a good layout. I like to disagree. I think these have great airtime. The tunnels are great, especially too having them. And I don't find them rough or anything. The restraints are comfortable. It's a great hyper coaster, and again, I do prefer Still Force over Mamba, but Mamba is still great. And it deserves more recognition than it gets, for sure. For my very last underrated coaster I'd like to talk about, American Thunder at Six Flags St. Louis was a GCI. and it was opened in 2008, and it features an 80-foot drop, and has a top speed of 48 miles per hour, and it has 2,700 feet of track. So it's kind of in a park that's not super popular. It's definitely on the lower tier of the Six Flags chain. Here the boss gets all of the attention as far as coasters go. And as far as GCIs go in general, Mystic Timber's gotten a lot of the attention, Gold Striker, even Wildcat, but this coaster just doesn't get a lot of attention. I think maybe it could possibly be because it's at a park that's not highly visited. But this coaster is very smooth. Actually feels like you're going faster than you are, especially on the parts of the ride that stay lower to the ground. No roughness at all, and it has a good layout. It's not the longest GCI out there, and I don't think it's the best GCI ever, but it's a very solid ride, and it definitely doesn't get the recognition that it does rightfully deserve. It's a great GCI, way better than Wildcat at Hershey Park, and if you're ever in the area, I highly suggest you check out American Thunder. So what did you think? Is there a coaster that's very underrated that I left out? What about one you felt like shouldn't be on this list? Let me know in the comment section down below what your thoughts are on the most underrated coaster. And as always, if you like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more great roller coaster, theme park, and travel content. Thanks so much.